Hey, here's a review of a new release through Raro Video, distributed by Kino Lorber. It's A Violent Life. This is a 1962 film based on a novel by Pier Paolo Pasolini. And if you're a Pasolini enthusiast, this kind of fits into his early filmography. Right between Acatone, here you see the opening credits, as well as a couple establishing shots of that character, played by Franco Citti. He was the character, the lead in both Acatone and A Violent Life. And in both films, he plays kind of a similar role in terms of a street kid who's kind of come up on the rough side of the tracks and goes through a little bit of a character development and meets kind of a tragic end in both films. Maybe a little bit predictably based on Pasolini's interests, but both really pretty effective films. I would say Acatone for sure is the better of the two, and A Violent Life definitely suffers by comparison and was diminished because Pasolini himself didn't direct it, just provided the source material. Here you see some scenes of the Acatone character, kind of establishing his street cred, you could say, his fearlessness and his bravado. This was also released right before Mamma Roma, which was Pasolini's second directorial feature. Now, he was already a pretty established writer, poet, novelist, and leading intellectual in Italy at the time, so his name was featured pretty prominently in the opening credits for A Violent Life, and there you see Franco Citti, and then Serena Vergano is kind of his love interest. There's some shots of the suburban areas outside on the fringes of Rome. You can see it's pretty gritty, pretty grimy, pretty impoverished, and these are stories about young men coming of age in a very deprived environment. This film has two directors, Paolo Haeusch and Brunello Rondi. Rondi's pretty important. He did a lot of work with Fellini during the La Dolce Vita 8.5 range of Fellini's career, and really all the way up through the end. So here you see Tommaso Puzzilli, I think is his name, his last name, but Tommaso is basically how you know him throughout the film. You can see that he's being kind of teased by his peers. They've just seen him at a dance hall sponsored by the Communist Party, dancing with a girl, and here are the young thugs hanging out with some disreputable character in his fedora, distributing money, and you'll see in a minute, drugs, and just basically paying these young men to get up to no good. The film is pretty engaging, pretty engrossing, and actually pretty shocking. There's levels of random street violence and abuse of innocent people, that's perpetrated by these young men. That was pretty shocking at the time, and is still pretty alarming when you just sort of see the dire situations that they put innocent people into, especially for a 1960s, early 1960s film. This film did run into some censorship issues in Italy, and even though it didn't do real well at the box office, again, suffering by comparison to Acatone, which was a commercial success and kind of Pasolini's calling card to go on to become one of the most important directors of his time in Italian cinema. Other than Rondi's, kind of established career as an assistant and right-hand man to Fellini, he wasn't really known as an illustrious director. And Haeusch, the other director, who was a little bit more technically savvy, basically got out of the movie business not too long after this. Here are some interesting shots. This is an excerpt from Rossellini's Il Generale del Rovere. He was, a kind of an Italian military leader, and the film is kind of a critique of Italy's descent into fascism. And these young men who are affiliated with the political right have been paid money to go into a theater and disrupt a showing of Rossellini's film, which was actually based on real-life events. And you can see the chaos unleashing itself inside the theater as these guys, again, are just kind of raising hell because they've got nothing better to do, and because they've been sort of duped into siding with the more fascistic side of the Italian politics of the time. And here they are, just basically having pulled off a big job, and now they want to keep the street going, so they're going to do a gas station robbery, and it doesn't end real well for the poor guy who's out there at night pumping gas and checking oil and all of that type of thing. So yeah, this is a film that if you really are into this early era of Italian cinema, as far as early 60s, it's got a little bit of that, political edge and a little bit of that Pasolinian swagger. It doesn't quite have the same poetic uh, reach and grace that Pasolini was able to achieve all throughout his career as a director. But I think it fits into the Pasolini catalog, and is a nice addition. Now, there's not a whole lot in terms of special features. They're really just short little video clips, like between 5 and 10 minutes each. There is a nice booklet inside, and that's probably the best extra besides the film itself. The restoration looks pretty good on Blu-ray. It's definitely not one of the classic great films of Italian cinema of this era, but it definitely provides context. I recommend it if, again, this is the kind of thing that appeals to you. A Violent Life.